Well, I want to thank Jan Black for inviting me, or maybe not. And also thank, Jan has been one of the people who's helped be a troublemaker at the through the Democratic Party, and like she said, we've made a lot of progress in that arena. I'm with the Peace Alliance, and we work with all kinds of groups. It just happens the Democratic Party is more receptive to grassroots involvement and working your way up. So thank you for signing 3,000 letters and petitions and all that stuff for me, Jan. I also want to acknowledge Marty Lewis, if you'd raise your hand. So Marty is our local person in Sam Farr's district who represents the Peace Alliance, and she's connected with so many of you, and she's introduced me to a lot of you. And I want to thank, if I forget somebody, help me remember Marty, but our California Peace Alliance has monthly calls, and we've had a number of speakers from the Monterey area. Mostly thank you to Marty for introducing me, but we've had Jan Black, we've had Stephen Goings, better known as Quasar. Let's see, who else have we had? We've had Chief Sonny, Reina, and Mustafa, and Michael Bear, and Wayne Hoff. Would you raise your hand? And Quasar, you raise your hand too? And we've had Terry Bear and Margot Stengel, who've been working with veterans in re-entry or coming back to this country. So thank you all so much. I'll never remember everything I wanted to say, but so I guess my best training for being a peace builder is I'm a mom. I have 4 sons, and I've survived that somehow. I grew up during the Vietnam era and protesting that war and the endless wars since that time, and have now, that sort of mutated into 2004 when I found out about the Peace Alliance and campaigned for a U.S. Department of Peace Building, where we really emphasize not just being against war, but against violence of all kinds, and that it's all very intertwined. So our work is related to not just ending war, but ending violence and ending the idea of dealing with conflict before it erupts into a dangerous, violent thing. Like Jan said, we've been involved with California, with the Democratic Party. We have worked with Dennis Kucinich and Barbara Lee. We've had a bill for U.S. Department of Peace in Congress ever since 2001, a modern era kind of bill. We work right now is the season for nonviolence, which is the memorial time between the death of Martin Luther King and Gandhi. And we use this as a period to gain additional co-sponsors for Department of Peace Building and to network with others. We've worked Marty's connected with any number of people in the Monterey area, the Sudanese community, the veterans community, all kinds of people. We work in San Diego with Kids for Peace. We've gotten city council endorsements all over the country, 43 city councils. We're very involved with the restorative practices and restorative justice movement. We're very active in the schools, peace recruiting in the schools in Grass Valley. And we do a lot of advocating, legislative advocating, including meeting with our Congress people and going to Washington, D.C. We were just in Washington in October and went to over 125 offices of members of Congress and senators. And in the process, we delivered over 3,500 letters from California asking them to please co-sponsor a Department of Peace building. And maybe half of those were from you, Jen. So one interesting story, when we were in Washington one time, a group of our peace people were in the congressional elevator, and 3 or 4 highly decorated military people got on the elevator, and things got very quiet. And then one of the generals said, "Well, what are you guys here for?" And somebody said, "Well, we're here because we're advocating for a U.S. Department of Peace building in our government and a Secretary of Peace." And things got very quiet again. And then the general turned and said, "Hurry." So I think that goes to your point that the military knows what violence is about, and they know and what war means, and yeah. So that was a very touching story. I have all these brochures and things, but one thing I wanted to tell you about is that peace building has actually been a part of our country's history from day one. And we've been trying to get a Department of Peace and peace education in the schools even since George Washington's day. It's amazing. And in so I guess it would be right around World War II until 1968, during that time period, there were 88 bills introduced into Congress calling for a Department of Peace. All of those related to international peace building. In 2001, exactly 2 months before 9/11, Dennis Kucinich introduced what we're calling sort of the modern era Department of Peace building bill, which merged the idea of that we have to work on peace both at home and abroad. So we have to work personally in our families, in our communities, that all of this violence is interrelated. So when Dennis Kucinich left Congress in 2013, we asked Barbara Lee if she would take over the bill, and she agreed. She was a logical person to do it because she helped Dennis Kucinich write the bill in the first place and was always an original co-sponsor, and she's a super courageous person. And it takes courage to be a peace builder, honestly. So when you go out afterwards, we have these very cool postcards that give a little bit of a summary of what Department of Peace is about. It's now called Department of Peace Building. So we have these, and I have all kinds of literature and things for you guys to sign, like Jan said. So essentially, Department of Peace is about preventing violence. It's about taking things that work, cost-effective things that work, and promoting those. It's about teaching peace in the schools to our kids. It's about addressing the root causes of terrorism to enhance homeland security. It's about all those kinds of things. Another point I wanted to make is that, well, I guess I probably already did this, but moving beyond a world beyond war is really, we have to look at a world beyond violence. And there are all kinds of definitions for peace building. and nonviolence. And there are a couple I wanted to mention. Dr. Michael Nagler said that violence is any mechanism that degrades the human spirit. Nonviolence is any mechanism that enhances the human spirit. The National Peace Academy, which is a sister organization of ours, talks about peace in terms of what the Earth Charter says as being the wholeness created by right relationship with oneself, other persons, other cultures, other life, Earth, and the larger whole of which we are a part. And one definition that always rings true for me is a Hopi saying that together with all nations we protect both life and land and hold the earth in balance. So it's something we all have to do. So there's probably no doubt among this crowd why we need to do peace building, but I thought I'd give you a couple of statistics. That violence causes more than 1.6 million deaths worldwide every year. That the world spends $1 on conflict prevention for every $1,900 it spends on the military budget. 1 in 6 American women report being victims of rape. 1 in 3 students report being bullied during the school year. And every day, at least 22 veterans take their own lives. That's almost 1 every hour.
And some of them would not have been suicidal if they hadn't had their service, and they got kicked out without getting a medical discharge, so they couldn't get services, and they were on the street.
Absolutely. There's also a handy-dandy little way that the Peace Alliance, we have a brochure that addresses, they've sort of broken it down into, we have to work on personal peace, building peace in schools, building peace in our communities, in the justice system, and internationally. So those are kind of our 5 main areas of focus. The way the Canadian Liberal Party, which has endorsed trying to get a Department of Peace in Canada, they put it that peace is, for the federal government, the pursuit of peace is an obligation, not an option. And then just briefly, the Department of Peace Building bill itself breaks it down into 7 different offices. So it'd be an Office of Peace Education and Training, Domestic Peace Building Activities, International Peace Building Activities, Technology for Peace, Arms Control and Disarmament, Peace Information and Research, Human Rights, and Economic Rights. So one thing that gives me hope, and that what I think a world beyond violence looks like, is what's going on in the school systems right now. Not in all of them, not in enough, but there are a lot of groups and practices that are trying to teach our children to get in touch with their emotions, to be mindful, teaching restorative justice practices, circle practices, which are ancient practices. There's any number of groups, and I could talk more just individually with you. A group called Seeds of Awareness brings mindfulness to kids, teaching them to pay attention to in the present moment. The restorative justice groups, and in all kinds of places, but Santa Rosa, San Francisco, Oakland, Gainesville, Florida, have worked with kids mostly in the area of trying to prevent suspensions, which leads to preventing truancies, breaking the pipeline, prison pipeline, and all that kind of stuff. And when they do this, there's one statistic, RJoy in Oakland, when they went in, the suspension rate dropped 87%. Very, very dramatic. The same thing in Santa Rosa. They did a pilot program that worked so well that they had the suspension rate went to almost nothing. And the county and different groups came together last year and realized this was so valuable, they got a $900,000 grant to take it to all the schools in Santa Rosa. Another thing is Oakland just came out with the Oakland Promise Initiative where they are pledging to help kids, give them hope that they can go to school, give them financial aid, give them tutors, all kinds of stuff, and they're calling that to reverse the cycle of poverty and hopelessness and to create a cradle to career plan. So I just wanted I have two fun quotes, I think, that apply. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh. It says, "It is possible that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha may take the form of a community. A community practicing understanding and loving kindness. A community practicing mindful living. This may be the most important thing we can do for the earth." And my last quote is from Chief Arvil Lookinghorse, who said, "Each of us is put here in this time and this place to personally decide the future of humankind. Did you think you were put here for something less?"